I can do, if I can be a small part in all that and trying to promote the sport that is not getting all the normal coverage, then I feel honoured to have been asked to do that. The voice to Subvision has been a true honour for me, and if I can continue to do that and people be happy with what I'm doing, I think that's a win for everybody.
G'day and welcome to another massive edition of Play by Pod, the podcast that takes the headset off in the sports department and takes an insight into the callers that bring all the action together from the top to the bottom and all sorts of sports right around the country here in Australia. Very unique broadcast. And if you want to catch up on all the other editions of the show, make sure you look up Play by Pod on all your streaming services. My name's Yendi and I'm joined by one of the great superstars in Victoria. And I think he's the jack of all trades. We've got the great Michael Van Dorsser. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks, Yendi. It's great to be here, mate. And, mate, great job. You've got 10 podcasts. This is fantastic. Yeah. You got the double digits up and, mate, it's fantastic to be a part of it. Thank you very much. It's the first one I've had the chance of being on this side of the camera for.
Excellent, mate. Well, you've got a pretty exciting time yourself. You know, the nuptials are coming up, and I mean, I think you could turn that into a podcast itself. But you're making a very gutsy decision, mate. Getting married smack bang in the middle of winter, mate. That is, as an Australian sports fan, that's gutsy.
I think it's better to do it smack bang in the middle of winter rather than in springtime, because I think springtime's where it all kicks off and it's all goes pear-shaped for us sports commentators, because unbelievable time of the year where it's all finals, and middle of the year at least you can get away with a couple of weeks or something here and there. So whereas come July, August, September, you're probably not getting away with that per se in the industry, are you?
No, that's right. To be fair, it's actually probably fantastic in a great way. I mean, it's a wonderful occasion for you, but to get married in the middle of winter or just have a break in the middle of winter, because as soon as you get back from the wedding festivities, you're on the sprint to the finals, regardless of what sports you're calling. And then that really sort of drags on, where there's a lot of us that are around there, and as you probably attest to for seasons that you go from, you go all year round and you just don't really get that break, do you?
No, I was going to say unfortunately, but mate, it's one of those things that you've got to have a passion for and absolutely love doing what I do, and being a part of it. It's been a very different way of enjoying sport in some ways. But it's been great, and I just feel like I just want to keep getting better and better as the weeks go on, to be honest.
Now, you are the jack of all trades, mate. You've got a fair few sports under your belt, and looking at your rap sheet, I haven't come across anything quite like it. Hockey is your main bread and butter, which is fantastic, and you cover some cricket, and you've covered some AFL and other bits and pieces. What sports have you covered, and what kind of attracted you to those sports?
Well, as you said, hockey's been the bread and butter for a number of years. It's really the first group that gave me the big break in some respects. Got to commentate the first season of the National Hockey One League, and when it was just on KO and all that sort of stuff, which was amazing. And then stinking COVID hit, but we won't talk about that. And then I've called local footy. Last year, got an opportunity to call some VFL games. I've called women's footy. I've called junior footy. I've called local netball, local cricket. Called a basketball game. Also, courtside announced for basketball as well. And then, as you said, cricket just came off a cricket game yesterday, a T20 local T20 game as well. So really, I'm trying to stay as broad as possible. Because I feel like you can be more employable that way. So hopefully if I can be that jack of all trades, sort of master of none sort of situation, I can sort of keep myself open for future employers and all that sort of thing. So, but started doing football and back in 2008, funnily enough, with some local footy and sports presenter got me involved in it. by the name of Wes Cusworth, and
Oh, of course, the great Wes Cusworth.
The great Wes Cusworth.
Everyone knows Wes. He's one of the most just a kind-hearted, passionate, gentle people in the whole world. He's just an incredible individual.
Absolutely fantastic bloke, and he got me calling off the back of a truck out at Rumballara in Shepparton, and I think I was doing some Murray Footy League. It was some Murray Football League game, and I was terrible at it. It was just unbelievable. But he's like, no, stay involved and do some stats. So I started doing stats and taking kicks and handballs and that sort of thing by hand, and that's how it all started. And now calling a bit more play-by-play, which is fantastic.
Talk us through that footy journey. You said your first game was horrendous.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that when I speak to callers, whether it's on the podcast or just in day-to-day stuff, I love the story about that first game because it is horrendous. On a podcast that was released recently, I was catching up with Brendan Jonty Rhodes. He spoke about calling the game off, calling grand final off the roof. It was recorded straight to tape, and he had hail and everything like that, and his umbrella got destroyed and all that. And I've heard similar sorts of stories. What happened with your first game?
I just couldn't get the words out. I didn't know what I thought. Oh, this will be okay, no problem at all. I didn't know who the players were. Yep. I had it's country footy, and you're sitting there trying to find the numbers while the play's going on, and you've got no idea what's happening in regards to it. And it was thrown in the deep end. And to be perfectly honest, I reckon I sank pretty comfortably in that regard. I came off and I'm just like, nah, that's just terrible. But Wes was good enough to see my passion in that regard, and I did a fair bit with him with different things, and courtside announcing was one of them that he taught me how to do, and all this sort of thing as well. So he goes, nah, you're good enough, just stay involved and we'll get you doing something simple, and then you can talk about the stats in the breaks. And I've always enjoyed being a numbers sort of a guy in that regard. So that was really nice and really good. But yeah, that first game, I don't really remember a great deal of it. All I know is it was just terrible. Off the back of a truck, and I reckon it was about a half-forward flank or something like that we were calling. I couldn't even see the far end of the ground. Couldn't even see the far end of the ground. It was just unbelievably terrible. But it got a bit more of a go and all that. And yeah, that's where later on hockey took over, and it was a lot easier, I think, with the hockeys because there's only 22 players on the field as opposed to having to work out 36. It's 44 even, and all that sort of thing. So, so it was a nice little sort of transition, and it was a few years later that it's starting to take off, and I'm really enjoying it.
You talk about the footy experience on the back of a truck, on half forward. That is country footy at its finest. The most bizarre experience that I have had when I was, like yourself, just trying to find my feet, half forward flank, in the back of a station wagon. And I was sitting with a great mate of mine. We had the roof open, didn't have any elevation at all. And the hydraulics of the door, they weren't too strong at all. So both of us move, and the door, when we're trying to call it, that's when we had the handheld microphone. Bang, the doors come down, hit us in the head. All right, there we go. We've away we go again. But I think that's what you've experienced there is just a standard call of country footy.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone starts somewhere, and I think it's fantastic. Like you get the opportunity to do that, and trying to get people to join in, and they're like, oh no, I can't do it. I'm like, no, give it a go, because I seriously think it'd be well worth it, because it's an amazing. It gives you an amazing rush when you get the opportunity to do it and have an opportunity like that. It's unbelievable.
I do have to ask though, you walk away from that first game, and I know your memories of that experience, were very vivid. But you've walked away and you've gone, I don't want to do it anymore. That's it. I've had enough. And I know Wes, being the great guy that he is, what sort of convinced you to jump back up on the horse? Because that's very, very tough. Like you have a bad day at the office, and you're under no obligation in this sense to keep going. But what sort of convinced you to go, you know what? I've had a bad one. It was horrendous. Let's go around again and try it.
For play-by-play calling, it was, I think, maturity. Back then, I was probably 2008, probably about 20 years of age. Didn't really know. As I said, I stayed involved. I took the stats.
Mhm.
I think I got to the point, and then I ended up going away for a few years, and then I came back, and I was still doing stats, and I'm like, I don't want to just be the stats guy anymore.
Mhm.
I want to contribute in another way. So a couple of opportunities came up on the boundary in the local commentary team, at the local radio station. Um, got down on the boundary, did some interviews, got the feel for that, and then all of a sudden, I got the opportunity. I think it was actually for a junior state championships for hockey.
Mhm.
That came up first, and they turn around and they put it out there for call teams. Do you think can you call
Mhm.
sport? And it was for Hockey Victoria as well. So it was like top level junior hockey.
Yep.
And then someone tagged me in it, and I'd seen it, and someone tagged me in and said, "Hey, I reckon you'd be good at this."
Mhm.
I'm like, "All right, I'll give it a go. No problem at all. Do a couple of games here and there, see what happens." Did a couple of games, absolutely loved it. Just
Mm.
completely different pace, completely different atmosphere, and I think that was what really sparked the fire in a way.
Had you been drawn to hockey much previously, or was it something you just went in cold and just sort of picked it up as you went along?
I've played for a few years.
Yep.
Um, I played for a few years, and I was like, yep, I'm not great, but I'm just a bit sort of player.
Yep.
So I'd done that. I started to understand the rules
Yep.
while playing, which is a big thing
Yeah.
because I never grew up playing hockey. I didn't start hockey until after I was out of school and all that. So I never actually had that sort of background. So trying to figure out what all the rules were with field hockey was an interesting one. But I started to understand the rules, and I'm like, okay, cool. So it was an opportunity, I think, and opportunity knocked, and I turned around and said, "Yep, sure. I'm sure I can give this a go. It's not going to be that difficult." I've been listening to all these guys do the commentary for football
Mhm.
while I've been doing the stats and all that, and I'm like, nah, surely it can't be that bad. So, and like I said, there's what 30, well, 30 players with the substitutions for hockey as opposed to 44. I mean, it's drastically less. So, and it doesn't move. And it was junior, so it wasn't moving as fast as what the senior football was in that first instance. So, to do that, I think, that really was the spark that I needed to get back and do some play by play.
Do you sort of, back when you were doing that and started out, given the level of competition, do you tend to be sort of a little bit more forgiving of yourself, thinking, well, I haven't really done this before. I know the sport, but it is junior sport, and to have voice on the commentary is kind of almost like a privilege to the competition. Like it's something new anyway. So you sort of go, well, it doesn't have to be perfect because the parents are just happy to have the kids have their name called.
Yeah, I think that was the case. That being said, I suppose it's like any play-by-play
Mm.
commentator; they're all perfectionists, aren't they? So,
Yes, of course.
I wanted to do the job as best as I possibly could,
Mhm.
and there was times where I'm sitting there going, "Oh, that was terrible," and me, a co-commentator, would just go, "Just let it go. You're
Mm.
okay."
Hmm.
Um, it's they turn around. There's a saying for the goalkeepers in hockey that you got to be like a goldfish. You might get one, and then one will go through your legs or something like that, and so you just got to put the bad one out of your head and just be a goldfish, the 3 second sort of rule, and move on. And I'm like, yeah, that's something that's stuck with me a fair bit in regards to it. And yeah, I wanted to do the best I possibly could,
Of
but
course.
even though, but you gave yourself a little bit of slack in that early stage, for sure.
Do you still find yourself being a little bit hard on yourself now as a caller when you do make a mistake, or do you tend to park it a little bit more quicker because it happens?
Yeah, parking it a bit quicker, but I also come home and debrief and like I'm sure I've said a couple of times to the fiance, "Oh, that was terrible," and she goes, I didn't even understand what you were trying to say, so didn't make any difference to me, in that regard." So I'm like, yeah, fair point, and I'm not as harsh on myself, but still, at the same time, I feel like I'm harsh enough that you want to make sure that, and trying to get that break into the industry, and you want to be doing more things right than not, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
absolutely. Well, one of the things I sort of talk to other callers about who are starting to make their growth, and we're fortunate enough, we've got some good young callers coming up here through Queensland, is that having umpired a lot of AFL at local level, over 500 games, a lot of my days I'd be umpiring in the morning and go call in the afternoon. But one of the things that I would sort of say is that I had some bad days on the field as an umpire.
Yep.
And if I'd missed a decision, I'd be spending the next 5 to 10 seconds lamenting over that decision. But of course, I'm not paying attention to anything that's happening in front of me. And so one mistake turns into 5 or 6 very, very quickly. So what I sort of encourage young callers coming through is that you make a mistake, who cares? Like umpiring, like calling, especially play-by-play, you've got 2 seconds to redeem yourself. So you just swipe away and get the next one right, because redemption in calling comes to you very, very quickly. But if you don't seek that redemption, you can dig yourself into a pretty big hole pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I reckon that's what I was trying to do in that very first game, like trying to go back over myself and all that. Whereas, I don't pretty much, well, I get what you're trying to say. And I think I review it after the game, and that's where I go hard.
Yep.
In the moment, it's like, well, good on you. Move, tap your partner, and then next, right? Then you sit back for a couple of minutes and go, "Oh, that was annoying," and then you've got to take the call back again, sort of thing. So you've got that, like, try and. I think that's where I let it go in that sort of moment where you get the opportunity to, and then review it badly. It was 360-degree feedback on yourself after the game, which is interesting. So,
are you one of those people that goes back and listens to every game, or do you?
No, I don't. I hate the sound of my own voice from time to time.
Most callers do.
And I know people say you've got to go back and review things. I try and find the highlights and I review the highlights. And because you sit there and go, oh, that's a good one. I can put that on social media.
Yes, of course.
Where were we before social media? But I don't tend to go back and review too much, just purely because I feel like it's over and done with. Like, as much as I get narky with myself with the way I called something, I also think it's gone. The opportunity's gone. So there's no point in it, is my feeling. I might be wrong. And like I said, people say you got to go back and review to learn from your mistakes. And so.
Yeah. Well, see, I sort of compare that whole review process as to your level of homework. I spent a lot of time, in sort of my work capacity at SEN. So I spent a lot of time listening to callers, but I don't really pay much attention to who is actually saying it. I pay attention to the rises, the transition between callers. So I spend a lot of time listening to what I like, listening to what I don't like. And so I take that mentality and I go straight back to my tapes and I disregard who's saying it. Yep. And I just learn and just sort of go, okay, well, this is what sounds good. This is what needs to sound a little bit better. And I'd be I could be listening back to my tape and go, look, this is to other callers. This is what I should have done better and whatever. And it's a whole part of the learning process. It's constant homework, listening to callers, whether it's your own stuff, your other stuff, and then building that platform.
Yeah, for sure. And listen to the radio, like driving to Melbourne and all that sort of thing, listening to call teams and trying to hear how they do it, hear how they change out, and, in particular in footy, and trying to build the repertoire of, I suppose, of words to say rather than just trying to find your own buzzwords, I suppose, or buzz phrases. That's the toughest part for me. Trying to get those buzz phrases out of my vocabulary without actually being too conscious of it, because if you're too conscious of it, you're going to say it all the time.
I totally agree there. And just build your persona on the air and make those buzzwords or any buzzwords or catchphrases just sort of part of your thing. Do you have any phrases that sort of come to mind that you go, yep, this is me asserting my dominance and color on the call, my style, my personality?
Not really. Not really at this point in time. I am one of those that likes to get excited.
Yes, of course. You are a fan first.
Where you see the opportunity and where you see players doing really well and getting some really good football hockey, cricket, whichever it is, just getting to see the opportunity and how quickly how they transition in different ways and score the goal or take the wicket or hit the big six in that regard. Yeah, I do like to have the good rise, and I think I would probably be a producer's nightmare in that respect. Um, so it doesn't burst everybody's eardrums, but yeah, it's one of those things that I try and you got to have fun with it in a lot of ways as well, and I hear a lot about that through different callers and different people talking through different podcasts. You got to have fun with it, and if you don't have fun with it, then it's not really for you, sort of thing, I think.
Speaking as for you, hockey is certainly something for you. Please give me a breakdown of what a calling dynamic is like, whether you've got a couple of play-by-plays or a play-by-play specials, and how those transitions work to tell the story and build the fabric of a broadcast.
Yeah, hockey is a bit different, I think, to a football broadcast where you generally have your two and one in that regard, like your two callers and your one special comments or a boundary or something like that. Hockey, you've probably got one and one, one caller, one special comments.
Yep.
Watching a lot of the Hockey One League now, they've got generally a special comment, a play-by-play caller, and then a special comments person. How we've sort of done it at Hockey Victoria level, which is the Premier League hockey, that both of us seem to be wanting to do play-by-play.
Yep.
It's a little bit different and difficult in that respect, and it's trying to build, I suppose, each other's repertoire in the hockey side of things. But yeah, the transitions are probably more like the special comments person will probably just talk a lot more game style, game structure, what the players are trying to achieve, whether they're falling away and playing defensive or whether they're attacking. In that regard, where the play-by-play person's really just, yeah, as per normal, calling the action.
Who's got the ball? What's happening with it?
Yeah,
what's it doing?
Exactly. I haven't heard of too much hockey on radio. All I've seen is been with Vision. So it's a bit different in that respect, I think. But I'd love to see it as a part of a radio broadcast one time, because I think it'd be absolutely fascinating. Like, and trying to bring more of the field into the description in that respect would be good.
And I think it'd be a good challenge for you too, given your knowledge and how you've sort of progressed in your calling career in that sport. Yeah, by the sounds of it too, compared to say AFL, more locally at AFL, you can have people interchange. So I tend to work with callers where we'll both be specials and we'll both be play-by-play, and we just do that overlap and we're chopping in and out of roles. But it sounds like hockey, which is very much like soccer, where you've got that designated role. It must be hard to sort of switch over, whether it's something you do in a different game with somebody. You go, okay, well, I might do colours this week and you can do play-by-play. Does that sort of come into it a bit?
I think so. Yeah, it seems to be that way. I mean, I find because I came into hockey so late, I find that I'd prefer to stick with the play-by-play.
Yeah, of course.
And I'd prefer to have the other people that are next to me who have been coaches. I mean, my very first game of Hockey One, I'll be honest with you, I had Georgie Parker, the hockey roo, sitting next to me at the desk, and I'm sitting there. I'm driving down to Melbourne from Shepparton, nervous wreck, going, I can't stuff this up. I can't stuff this up because it's Georgie Parker of all people. And it was just unbelievable. Like the knowledge that she had of the game. I said, I'm happy to take the play-by-play. And she goes, yep, that's fine with me. So I was just like, okay, you do that. I know my role, and you throw and trying to bring them in a bit more, and you got to throw a few questions at them while you're talking about the play-by-play in that regard as well. So, yeah, it's probably a bit more designated in a way, and it is a bit more like soccer.
And basketball too. Basketball follows that sort of format.
Yeah, netball as well, possibly as well.
Yep.
A lot more conversational, I find.
Yep.
Which is enjoyable. I find that's probably why I'm doing all these other sports, because I find the enjoyment in learning from the other people as well, the experts, for want of a better term, that you bring in and have sit alongside you while you're calling what is actually happening. You've got the experts who can tell the story about different things as well.
I totally agree. And if you're coming into a sport that's you're relatively new in, it is better to have someone really good on specials. And then you just let the basic foundations of your play-by-play just take over. And then the longer the game goes on, you're listening. You spend a lot of time listening to their strategies. I found that with basketball about players, going into the hoop, driving in, and the different tactics and mechanisms that come with that. Having coaches with me as specials. And eventually I start adopting that the longer the game goes on, because I'm enriching in that knowledge too.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, because it's just, I suppose it's the active listening side of things, while you're commentating. I think that helps build your repertoire 100%, in regards to that. Like, you're just building, and the more you do it, the better you're getting at it, because the more you're listening to someone else talk about it, and being a part of that call or being a part of that coverage, it just really helps, I think, in so many different ways.
Speaking of coverage, what is the coverage like for hockey in general? Not just across Victoria, but domestically across Australia.
Well, thankfully, Hockey Australia just signed a great deal with 7 Plus, or the Channel 7 network, which is all the hockey's being streamed on 7 Plus at the moment. We're seeing some pro league action, which is over in India at the moment. We're seeing some great hockey being played there, and it's a terrible time slot for us. But anyway, we'll go back and rewatch it, because we're able to now. I think it's getting better. And the Hockey One League has really enhanced hockey, I think, in the region, or in the country. But and especially this year being an Olympic year, I think the coverage will go up another notch, because everyone will want to take it in, because you get to see all these people, all these different sports that you don't get the chance to see at all normally. So the coverage is, while it's not great, and there's not, I mean, it's still probably classed as an amateur sport, hockey.
Yep.
But I think it's getting better, and it's, like I said, the move to 7 and 7 Plus. Hockey One got in. I think they had Friday night games on channel, I think it was 7 Mate last year, which was great. The fact that they, as I said earlier on, they started on KO to start off with, and that was fantastic. And now the transition to mainstream TV is great to see, and it just opens up more sport, more avenues for young kids coming through that want to check out more sport. And in the end, I think we're all in that same business, that we want to promote sport, and we want to push as many kids to be playing sport outside as possible.
And I think the benefit, one of few benefits about COVID, and this is something I speak with streaming agencies in on a regular basis, is that the question more or less was asked of, why aren't you streaming this? And so there's more ways to watch more sports across more platforms, and the next step is to get callers to come and do it. What are some of your key highlights, career highlights from a hockey perspective? Obviously, calling one game's great. Calling with Georgie Parker is next level.
Yeah.
What have been some of your key pristine highlights, whether it be a grand final or getting on a major network?
Yeah, I haven't broken that major network side of things yet. I think that first season, getting the email that came through, I remember that day as clear as anything. I was working, in education support by trade, and I'm seriously, I was doing some yard duty, and all of a sudden an email came through saying, "Hey, we'd like you to be a part of this Hockey One. It's a new one, and all that. We'd love you to be a part of Hockey One coverage. It's going to be on KO and all this." And at that stage, I hadn't heard of KO. I think this was like 2018, 2019. And I'm sitting there going, "Holy crap.
Yeah.
Seriously, like, I'm going to get the opportunity to do this. This is amazing." And as I said a bit earlier, like, then COVID came. So we did that one season. COVID came, shut down the competition for 2 years. And then it was like, oh, sweet, I might get the opportunity to be a part of it again. And I was a boundary rider. Like, I was down doing boundary. And then this year they went with someone else doing boundary. And I went, I was the ground announcing sort of thing. So it's sort of gone a little bit backwards, but at the same time, that was just amazing being a part of that and having that opportunity to sit on a desk next to Georgie Parker, who like growing up, she was like you saw what she was able to do on the hockey field. It was unbelievable. That was just a career highlight in that respect. Um, I think well, it's not hockey related. I've called a couple of obviously Premier League grand finals. Got to call games in Shepparton, which like they played Premier League games up there, and I was like, "Yep, I'm there. I'll do it for you, no problem at all." And they're like, "Yep, cool, no problem." I think a couple of years ago they asked me down to interview some coaches during grand final week.
Oh wow!
So that was all fantastic. But and then last year, I suppose getting to do the VFL last year was it was just amazing.
What was the game? What was your debut game, and where was it?
It was Werribee versus Sandringham at Werribee.
Nice.
And again, the connection with Shepparton, with Michael Barlow, Shep United footballer.
Yep.
And I'd watched him and I'd taken stats for him one day and he'd taken like 48 possessions. And when I was like really, like when I was young, starting out, and I'm like, this guy should be playing AFL. And this was before he got drafted to Freo. But yeah, to be able to call that game, Sean Manor kicked, I think, 7 goals. And I remember going with the line when he kicked his 6th, he's got the same number of goals as he's got on his back, all that sort of thing. And I was just like, that felt really good. And yeah, so that was the very first game. And then I got a couple of others to do. One was Richmond, Sydney at Punt Road, and then Essendon, Sydney at Windy Hill. And Sydney hadn't had a great year, and then they won both of those two. So I was like, oh, maybe they might ask me back to do another Sydney game. The Sydney boys would be happy with that. But yeah, just doing the VFL last year was just unbelievable. And yeah, I was just like, I hope they can call me back because it was, while everyone's like, oh, you're going to be calling AFL soon. I'm like, no, I don't think so. But at the same time, it's for me, I don't think AFL is the end goal. If I get I think I can still see that if I get the opportunity to do it, would be a stepping stone.
Yep.
So,
but the VFL's kind of for aspiring callers, the VFL's the next level. But again, at the same time, the VFL might be the highest level that one gets to, but given the way the competition has evolved across 3 states, it's and I think in the coming years it'll evolve into 4 states with South Australia. Yep. I think if people had that's their Mount Rushmore, that's as far as they go. It's actually not a bad competition to be involved in.
No, not at all. I mean, I keep trying to. I keep saying I want to keep getting better, and look, VFL is a pretty good competition. Like you see, you're still seeing the best footballers running around in the Eastern Seaboard at the moment. It's just an amazing opportunity, and yeah, to get that phone call and say, hey, we'd love you to do a few games of the VFL. I was just, yeah, it was on par with getting that email about the Hockey One competition. Like, yeah, now and being, I suppose, a little bit older, and you start understanding it a bit more, and it's just, yeah, from when you started back in 2000, like when I started back in 2008 with that truck and not knowing who the players were, to now, like you're sitting there and you're listing off all the players you can and getting the opportunity to do that. It was just, yeah, an absolute amazing experience, and one I am so blessed to be doing.
I got to revert back to hockey. What scope is there for you as a caller to migrate up the ranks, where you are at the moment, and what potential is there to go higher?
Look, at this point in time, I'm trying, I suppose, trying to go from that, make that transition from Premier League back into that Hockey One calling competition, where I'd be more in the studio more so than anywhere else, or wherever they were going to call it from. Yep. Trying to find out what it takes to make that transition, or try and get the opportunity to have a look at what they do in international hockey. Dan Strange is probably the voice of hockey in around the world, and he's calling these games in the pro league and all that. So hopefully the opportunity could come to have a conversation with him about it and say, hey, how can we get better, or how can I get better? How can I make that sort of step? And then probably from that to even the Olympics side of things. And I think
2032, mate, 2032.
that's the aim. Brisbane, looking definitely at you, Brisbane, coming for you. So goals, ambitions, and yeah, I think that's what you got to have as well. Just the opportunity to and that's why I suppose hockey's one, but that's why I'm trying to keep a breadth of all different sports as well. So
the $1 million question that I have to ask is: you've called all these ranges of sports, there are different levels of your development. What's the easiest and what's the hardest to call?
Yeah, fair call. Good question. Cricket's probably one of the easier ones.
Mm-hmm.
You're calling, yeah, it probably sounds really easy, but at the same time, you got to try and do it properly. But you've got mates around you, and you're talking crap with each other and all that, and all that, and so you're laughing every so often. But I reckon that's probably one of the easy ones. I think to try and put a good call together, I reckon netball maybe. More so, it's probably a little bit more foreign in a lot of ways, but it's something that I'm trying to work on and trying to pick up a lot more. But no, I reckon because of so much is going on the field, it'd have to be. I reckon footy would have to be up there with the hardest game to call because it's all happening so fast, and you don't even have downtime. You've literally got to, as we say, tap each other and take a breath where you get the opportunity because it's just free flowing, and yeah, and that's why it's such a great sport.
I will say one of the things that have helped me with my footy calling, and it's something I've echoed a lot over the journey, is sitting back and doing specials just for one game. And it changed the way I observed the game because it meant that I could observe a lot more. And if you tend to go into that VFL format again in 2024, where you might have two play-by-plays and you've got to change it up, you're bouncing off each other and you interchange between roles. So when you're in specials mode, you look up the periphery and look at bits and pieces that you can feed in your call. I think for me, doing specials just for one game, it changed my play-by-play calling for so much better.
Yeah, righto. Just because you've seen so much more of the action?
Absolutely. Well, same as an umpire. When you're umpiring and you're doing play-by-play, you just envision this little box. You don't look outside the peripherals. So now I find when I'm working in a tag team, so to speak, when we're interchanging, is that when the other person's got the call, I'm looking for matchups further up the field. And so if there's a stoppage, there's a chance where that changeover might happen where I revert back to play-by-play. But even out of habit, if somebody's got a kick on the wing and they delay themselves just for a second, I will spend that second looking further up the field to see what happened. And there was an incident, an action last year where it was Williamstown and Brisbane, and the Williamstown player took the mark on centre wing, and he took a little bit of time to get to his feet. So I'm like, great, this is awesome. So I've looked 50 metres up ahead where he's probably going to kick the ball. Mitch Cox used to play against his old team for the first time. He had this space in front of him. Ball goes up, and I've said, oh, look, Mitch Cox is presenting a lead around about 45 metres out from goal. The camera can't see it. Yep. And Cox comes in, takes a hanger. But I've used that time to premeditate it. I've already called it. And so that's the one thing I've kind of learned is doing specials is just opening up the peripheral. So when you are calling with other people and you've got a chance to make a comment or observe, those things could be fantastic because the camera can only see so much.
Oh, exactly, and especially with with the games that we've been doing, like with the VFL, with that one camera or something like that, it is a lot harder to pick up everything that's going on around the ground. So yeah,
whereas would you say with hockey, the camera pans and you can virtually see everything?
Yeah, you can pretty much. There is obviously if they get a long ball in and all
Mm.
that, you can't. There is play moving along further down, and also thankfully there's no offsides with hockey too, so it's not as bad anymore with that. Um, so yeah, you can get those long balls through, which is great to see. So yeah, I appreciate that. That's yeah, something I tried to do, and I think that came from the stats sort of thing too,
Mhm.
with the footy. Like you'd be looking up while also listening to what the players, like what the call was going on, and so you'd be looking up and generally, and I didn't realize how much I was picking up off the ball compared to what the callers were.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like they weren't like you'd pick up a fight before or something for some reason. You'd pick up the fight before the callers would even know what's going on. Sort of think, oh, boys, look down there, you got something something else on. Um, we'll watch the play while you watch the fight side of things, sort of thing. But which is not great, I know. But at the
Mm.
same time, but like if that's or if someone's down off the ball, like
Mhm.
you pick that sort of stuff up before you play your play by play callers, and yeah, it's yeah, it's something that I didn't think I had in there. But when you were
Mm.
talking about that, it's like yeah, you got to subconsciously, I suppose, when you're not calling it yourself,
Mm.
it's something you got to keep an eye on.
Even if there's a stoppage and
Mm,
you know that they're going to take 3 or 4 seconds, that gives you 3 or 4 seconds to just do the 180 views. What's happening? Is there any space? If
mm,
we see a stoppage come out and you've already you might make a comment saying, "Oh, look, Sandy only have one forward inside against 3 defenders. So if the ball comes out, they're going to be in trouble." Bang! The umpire throws the ball up. Sandy will get a clear and kick out. It's a 1-on-3. You've already said that
yep.
that teammate is outnumbered, and then you can tell the story of how the transition comes through from Werribee to clear the ball out. You've already made that comment because you've used that couple of seconds.
Yeah. And
Um,
yeah, it's good to see, and it just helps with the call, I think, too. Yeah.
one other question I'll ask, and this is something I get very excited about from your background. You've gone from radio to TV streaming. How awesome and how important has the radio background helped with your video streaming calling?
Yeah, it's been amazing. You can't guess anymore, though. That's probably another. That's probably one of the things, and it was something I learned very quickly. I got a lovely message from from one of the radio guys that I used to do a bit with, and after my first game that I did live stream and footy, and he goes, "Great job, fantastic, but just remember we can see the coverage,"
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and that has stuck with me. I'm like, yep, fair point, because you need to make sure that you're more on point or more on point with what you say
Mm-hmm.
in regards to it. But it just gives you I think it's just given the confidence to go with what you know
Mm-hmm.
in regards to it. It helps. Yeah, helps you understand the way things are, and then with the streaming side, with the streaming side of things, it just you probably don't have to do as much
Mm-hmm.
calling as you would with radio, but it's it's just one of those easy. Yeah, it's made it a bit easier and something you can relate more to in that regard.
And for those who are listening in, we're with the great Michael Van Dorsser, who is the jack of all trades, master of them all here on Play by Pod. And make sure you jump on Play by Pod and check us out on Instagram, Facebook. We're still developing that element, and we've got all the wonderful streaming platforms or podcast platforms like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon Radio, Spotify, etc. And of course, check us out on YouTube. Now, my big question for you today, mate, and because you're the man that can answer this to perfection, what advice do you have for people who are looking to learn and take on as many different sports? And what's the preparation and learning processes like to learn 4 or 5 different sports to call?
I'll go with the preparation and all that first. Someone told me learn the rules first.
Mm-hmm.
The play by play will come.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know the rules of a sport, you can very quickly pick up. That will help you more so with your commentary. And I was like, yep, that makes sense because you can then know what the whistle's going is being blown for. 9 times out of 10. Not necessarily always in football, but you probably know that more than the rest of us. But so learn the rules and make sure that you. I find writing the players' names out helpful a lot of times, more so than typing it. If you're handwriting your notes, I think that actually it sinks in your head a bit more. Sounds weird.
For those who are listening, I'm worshipping Mike here because that is, for me, that is the number one point that I take away when it comes to learning players' name. If you are writing it down on paper, you're almost writing it into your brain.
Yep.
So I'm worshipping you, mate. That is wonderful advice.
And it's just like my notes at times. I don't know if I've put something up on socials at point in times. I'm generally up till about midnight the night before a game in a lot of ways. Because you work till 5 o'clock, and then you come home and you sit there and you're trying to talk to the fiance and make sure everything's good, and then I'm like, all right, plan a wedding in the middle of the year, and then sit down and like, all right, now I've got to sit down and try and work out my notes and work out where things are going. She's well and truly gone off to naughty land, and and I'm still sitting burning the midnight oil trying to get these players' details down and trying to get all the information, and it just helps. I'm one of those over preparers, I think. I try and over prepare because if I don't over prepare, then I feel like there's going to be an opportunity where I could have said something I don't have the information for it. But I think just have a crack at it. I think is the one advice. And if you don't worry about messing it up either. Like you're going to have moments, like you said earlier on, you're going to have moments where it's fantastic. You're going to have great opportunities. But you don't forget, like, don't go into it with the mindset that you're going to fail, because if you go into the mindset that you're going to fail, then you generally do. But yeah, just try and figure out all the nuances. And so I remember I was listening to the Howie games, and I listened to the Mark Howard's podcast, and of when Gilly did interviewed Howie, and how Mark turned around and goes, "Say yes, figure out the details later."
Yes, of course.
And that's something that's stuck with me quite a bit at the moment. And so when people are like, "Oh, can you do this? Can you do that?" Yep, no worries. And then I'm like, "Oh, hang on, I don't know what I'm doing here." But you end up sitting there going, "No, you're proud in what you do, so you find the way to work out how to do it." So that's one thing that definitely did stick with me, is say yes and figure out how later.
I think that's the reality too, with the experience that you've had. You've got the basic fundamentals down for play-by-play calling, which exists in virtually every sport that you can call. It's just a different variation and how that works in that particular sport, and how that ties in, whether you've got other callers or other specials or interviewers, all those sorts of things. But when you've got so much experience in the basic fundamentals of calling, you can virtually call anything except horse racing. I think that's a little bit different.
I don't know. People have said to me, you should be doing some horse racing. And I'm like, I'm red-green colorblind. I don't think the colors are going to help me here. So I've deliberately stayed clear of it because, I don't know how I'd go with all the colors. And I'll be honest with you. That's the honest truth. So I'm trying to just find all these other sports just to do it, because it's more, well, for me, it's more enjoyable anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Now we generally don't tend to time date these podcasts. But one thing I will ask you, and I'm going to throw you on the spot: when 2024 finishes, what's the one thing you want to have achieved?
Good question.
Yeah, this is why I'm over here on this side, mate.
That's exactly right. Yeah, no, great work. I think just to have continued to improve. Ideally, I'd love to be doing some more VFL games, but I also know that there's stuff going on behind the scenes in that regard. I'd love that opportunity. I think personally, to have kept improving. I don't know how I can put a figure on that. In regards to it, but it's just one of those things. Like, if I can continue to improve, maybe hopefully get another phone call or another email saying we want you to be part of the Hockey One commentary again. I think that would be pretty swell. especially now that it's on like Channel 7 and all that. So, and yeah, just to try and find that next step and how to break into that next little step and be consistently asked back.
Make sure you speak to that superstar that is dominating all of world hockey at the moment. Because there's one thing I've experienced is that the most callers who were in that top bracket of the elite calling aspect, they're more than happy to spend some time chatting and helping pass on some advice.
Yeah, and I've noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
I have also noticed that there are people you do ask and you say, can you help me with this? And you sit there and like, I think they might think that I want to take their job, and it's not necessarily that. I don't want to do that. I just want to become the best person I can be. And if that happens to be when they retire, be an opportune, be there to take on their spot after that, then that's the idea. But at some point, like, try and learn that way and learn how they get to that, how they made it to that level. So,
and I think that the reality that we as sports fans and as broadcasters have to accept, and it's a great reality, is that there are more platforms, more so now than ever, to call. So if you can make the tier below a tremendous high level quality of calling, then that just boosts the profile of that sport from where you are to the tiers below, and the standard up above at the international levels at a high standard. And so you have that trickle down effect of the standard is just such a high quality, which might even prompt more companies, more businesses to invest more money in sponsorship, to do more streaming and to pay more callers. So I think the advice coming from the top to trickle down to the bottom is going to be invaluable for broadcasting all around Australia and worldwide.
100%. And look, if I can be a small part in all that and trying to promote the sport that is not getting all the normal coverage, then I feel honoured to have been asked to do that. So to be able to do that side of things, to put a voice to Subvision has been a true honour for me. And if I can continue to do that and people be happy with what I'm doing, I think that's a win for everybody.
Speaking of honour, Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on board as part of the Playby podcast, and we've been connected for a while now, and I'm just so enthralled by your journey already, and learning so much as those who are listening in or watching in, being engrossed about that. I follow callers. I'm so intrigued to pick up hockey and watch that, and obviously follow your stuff. And I'm just so pumped with the journey ahead of you, because you're covering so much space, so much territory, and I think it's just great exposure for you and showcases your great diversity of talents.
Thanks very much, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure to be a part of it, and it's something that hopefully we can do and catch up in person one day and have a call together. It'd be unbelievable. But thank you so much for the opportunity to do this and share a part of my story.